The Power of Food we are planning as a big project that will be rolled out across 6 regions of the UK.
Joining forces with Nick and Flora and Mish, it feels like we're together, we're better armed to start dealing with some of these issues.
I think at the heart of this project, The Power of Food, is also this idea of dignity. The dignity of being able to go and have a relationship with somebody in your area who grows your food, to have a conversation with them about the food that's been grown, to understand how to cook it well so it nourishes you and your household, to know that you're part of caring for the place that you live in. These are all things that are actually just foundational to being human.
We have an industrialized, commodified food culture where we can have anything on tap, go to a supermarket and just order something that has no relationship or resemblance to what the season is or to what the place is. So we become a bit denatured.
The system is set up to sort of almost take people away from that connection with food. People really want to have that connection, but never thought that it was actually possible.
Now is the time for us to reconnect.
So yes, I have a vision for a future world where we are a lot more interconnected and a lot more that we take care of each other more. There's more love. Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of We Are Carbon. I'm Helen Fisher, and you've already heard from all 4 of the guests that are joining me. We've come together for a conversation about their collaborative project, The Power of Food. It's in its early stages, but is bringing together their established areas of experience, which are diverse. Between them, they can draw on knowledge and resources as varied as the digital platform of the Open Food Network, to the community work of the Larder in Lancashire, and the socially engaged artistic practice of Living Justice. It's a wonderful mix of voices that really highlights to me the readiness that is all around us in the world to step up and do things differently, working together to change the systems that we're all connected to. I'm going to let each of the guests introduce themselves, and in the description you'll find further info to their individual work, along with their collaborative project. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with more from We Are Carbon. And let's get stuck in.
Hello, I'm Nick Weir. I'm a part-time grower on a community-supported agriculture project, and I helped to set up a food hub in my hometown in Stroud, Gloucestershire, about 20 years ago. And I'm now part of the Open Food Network, which is a global community of farmers, growers, community food enterprises and software geeks with a common belief that the food systems of the world are broken, and we're in the process of rebuilding food systems from the bottom up and building them more fair, more resilient, more sustainable, kinder than the existing food systems.
Yeah, so I'm Kay Johnson. I'm director of the Larder. My background, well, I was brought up on a small farm in Lancashire, and then I became a chef, and then that was far too much hard work, so I became a nutritionist, and the majority of my work as a nutritionist has been managing initiatives in disadvantaged communities. So I worked in Scotland for a long time, I've worked overseas, and I've really experienced the way that it doesn't matter where you are, that food brings people together and magic happens when you do that, and there's so many other benefits. I set up the Larder about nearly 10 years ago now, and that's what it's about, really. It's bringing people and food together in different ways. We run educational programs in communities with communities, so it's people, we speak to people, we kind of co-produce all our programs, and then kind of see what happens, and things grow organically. And one of the main things that I'm working on now is looking at how we can make fresh local produce affordable to people on low incomes without farmers bearing the cost. So I'm working with farmers who are often struggling and not getting a fair price for what they're producing. And then I'm also working with communities where people are struggling to buy food and having to use food banks. So I've kind of got that paradox. So my work sort of sits in the middle of that, trying to think of inventive ways to kind of to bridge that gap.
So hello, lovely to be here with you all. My name is Flora, and I collaborate with Mish Fabreleu, and we're both co-founders of Living Justice. And my background is also like Kay. I grew up on a farm. I was very fortunate to grow up on a mixed farm. And I then studied geography and landscape design. And I slowly came to realize that of all the human activities there are, how we grow our food touches everybody's lives, and it touches the whole surface of the earth. So my contribution to our collaboration is that I'm passionate about our capacity as humans to be part of shaping the earth in a way that benefits ourselves, but also benefits the whole of life. And food is one of the most, perhaps the most dynamic and direct ways we can do that. So we can, by choosing to build food systems that benefit our water systems, benefit the soil, benefit the biodiversity, but also benefit our own inner landscapes, our bodies, our digestive systems, our minds, our spirits. And so for me, the reason I'm interested in food is because it is the place where we as humans can be, I feel, building and rebuilding a better world.
Thank you so much, Helen, and thanks for coordinating this podcast on such a vital and fundamental way of being in the world, which is to discover how to be deeply regenerative and reverential around what food is, not only to our own bodies, but to a culture. And my work with food has been as an artist, and I do believe that the power of the arts has offers a profound potential, because it invites in curiosity, and it invites in different ways of knowing through the body to discover how we're connected with nature. And food is a bridge to this vital connection. And I happen to be in South Africa at the moment, so thank you for inviting me to contribute, even though I am on another continent. For me, food is a way of defining and distilling what are the primary essences of what connects us all, and that is our relationship to the earth, our relationship to the food that we eat, something that is a necessary contribution to what life is. And so food became the medium for my artistic practice. It's an intervention, I would call it an intervention, a disruption to the commodified capitalist systems of food production, which are so alienating to not only ourselves, but also disturbing and disrupting and poisoning to the land. And so I think that food as an artistic practice invites us to become food citizens rather than food consumers. And I also love to use food as a metaphor. So even the practice of people gaining a new skill of learning how to ferment cabbage as an artistic practice, but still leaving with a practical activity and a tradition which helps to reaffirm our connection to food as medicine. And that if we were eating foods that came from soils that were well looked after, that we were eating food that was of the season, that we were eating food that was of the land, that brings in a food activism and a food understanding that we need to be living with the food and the geographies that sustain our indigenous foods, and that brings us to being food citizens for food sovereignty. So that brings in the political as well as the sacred. So that's my take on it.
Why is it important to connect people to their food? I think that if I wasn't spending a bit of my time every week with my hands in the soil, I would not be able to carry on doing the work that I do in front of screens all day. I think it's really important to connect with the earth. And if we can eat food that has been grown kindly, not just kind to the humans, but kind to all the beings that are linked to our food, then we will be more whole as human beings. And I think what the world needs is whole human beings who are connected to each other and connected to the land their food comes from.
So we're all here together, and the reason that we've come on this call from different parts of the country, different parts of the globe, is because all of you are at the early stage of bringing together a project about the power of food and the way that you could explore connecting people through food, connecting and with community and all of those extraordinary things we've just heard from all four of you, and quite a diverse range of inspirations, but the feeling of meaningfulness of that really enlivened life, that vitality coming from real connection to food. I think that came across from all of you and was very, very beautiful. And what I'd like to have a look at, you haven't lightly called the project The Power of Food. Power is a very strong word, and I think that you've chose that very deliberately. And before we talk about food anymore, I would like to first consider the power of collaboration, because there is a reason that you have come together from different backgrounds, different places, different focuses to talk about food and bring this project forward. So what is it that has made you think, yes, let's at this time work together? Let's explore how we can come together and unite and bring our energies together. And what in particular do you value about this collaboration that you're building?
The word that springs to mind is a word I use a lot these days, which is mycelium. This idea of a connection between beings that is mutually beneficial, and these beings can feed each other and pass information and pass nutrients and so on, and that it's mainly invisible. It's the biggest part of the mushroom process, but it's the bit that we don't see. And I think what is happening around the power of food is that there are hundreds of thousands of people across the UK who are aware of the connective power of food. And I think I'm one of them, but until I started working with Kay and Flora, it wasn't really a conscious sense of that power. I knew that for the last 25 years I've had to give every Friday morning up to working on my allotment, because if I don't turn up and work on that piece of land, then I don't feel whole. But I'd never really sort of thought about what does that mean and what's the science and the art behind that. It was just that I knew I needed to connect with where my food came from. And I think what is starting to happen around the power of food is that as I'm working with these three amazing women, I'm learning to make that more conscious, that connection with food. And as I do that, I am becoming more of myself. And the project is so much more than the sum of the parts. This is something Kay said the other day when we were talking, that the whole of the power for food is so much greater than the sum of the parts. So at the moment, it's only a relatively small number of people. But I imagine as we roll this thing out, that we're going to have a large number of people who know that food is powerful and start to understand why it's powerful and how they can use that power to build communities, to build connections between people, to build connections across difference. And in the process, each one of us is richer. So, from a selfish point of view, I'm doing it because it makes me happier and fuller and more complete as a human.
So yeah, I feel like I've been banging my head against a brick wall for a lot of the time over the last few years, and increasingly so. Things are getting much harder. There's less money around for people, and there's less money for the public. And farmers are also struggling for various reasons, and it's also really difficult when you're running a project to get funding. So I feel like I've been banging my head against the brick wall for a very long time. And there's been many times when I've just felt like I'm just going to give this up. Why am I wasting my time doing this? I'm not getting anywhere. And actually, Nick and we've been, I don't know how many years, several years, we've been so we need to work together. We need, there's been opportunities that have never really kind of worked out because of lack of funding or COVID or things have got in the way from that happening. And then I don't know, out of the blue, you kind of came up with this idea, Nick, and introduced me to Flora and Mish, and it kind of just works. It sort of feels a little bit like this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been needing. I do. I've got a team that I work with, working in Lancashire, and I try and connect very much with what's going on in the rest of the country. But a lot of the time, I am working in isolation, and it's a lonely place, and it is, as I say, it's been pretty tough. So this collaboration to me just makes sense, and it's come at exactly the right time, and it really feels in many ways it's the right time, and it's not just the right time for me personally, for my project, and for the people that I work with. I think for kind of on a national level, it's the time. People are talking about this, and I think we're at the forefront of something really quite exciting.
Thank you. When listening to Nick speaking about the mycelium, there's this huge feeling of imitating or sort of leaning into the way that nature works and realizing and bringing that through. And when we think of that, ecosystems requiring diversity to create strength, do you feel that within this project that the diversity and the differences between the skills that you bring is adding to it more than it is making it complex?
There's lots of things that I hadn't thought about that after meeting Flora and Mish, I feel like it kind of makes sense, because they're bringing that side of things in that I hadn't really considered. So I'm kind of thinking much wider now, and yes, so it does kind of make sense to. I think we are all bringing I think quite amazing qualities together that all fit very beautifully.
And can I just sort of add another sort of layer to that I agree with what Kay just said. And as we roll this thing out, and as we bring in more and more people with different stories, different understandings of the power of food, that can only make us all richer. I'm very aware that in a lot of British society, we are quite disconnected from our stories of food. We buy plastic wrapped cucumbers from supermarkets that we have no idea where it comes from or how it was grown. Whereas there are still cultures within the UK and in other parts of the world where they have a very immediate and real connection with how their food is grown, how it's harvested, how it's prepared, how it's cooked. And if we can bring that into the mycelium, if we can tap into those stories, that can only make us all richer, definitely.
Helen, I really love your question about collaboration, and I think this project really is a beautiful example of how the whole is certainly greater than the sum of the parts. And on this journey between Nick, Kay, Mish, and myself, we've really recognised how powerful this project is because of our different experiences and perspectives, and also because of our common passions and valuing of food. I think that in this, from my perspective, I feel that Nick and his dedication to the Open Food Network, they bring this extraordinary social infrastructure across the country of people who are so committed to working in their particular context to create a really viable alternative to the monopoly of supermarkets and the mass production and commodification of food. That living network of the OFN is so valuable. It's such a valuable learning community. And so being able to connect with that has been really powerful for us. In talking with Kay, learning more about her journey and the depth of her commitment to working really intimately with her community and her embracing all the different parts of the food cycle. So working with the farming community, working on a learning sphere, working with people who are looking to understand nutrition, her really deep hands-on, intimate understanding of how what's going on for people in their everyday lives, and how the strength of communities to actually solve their problems together has been really inspiring. Misha, I'm so sure, will speak about her arts practice, but also together we've developed a research process, which I think has helped, maybe putting a lens on all the work that's being done, is understanding the power of research, the power of actually dedicating time and energy and resource to deeply listening to what people are doing and forming connections and seeing much larger trends and much larger patterns emerging. And I think from that point of view, it's about valuing this network, valuing those community practitioners, and seeing that they are actually offering a very real and very viable alternative. And it's not even an alternative, it's actually, they're offering a very real and very viable way of rebuilding our food system and making it one that we can all shape and all be involved in. So yes, it's a really good question, Helen. I think collaboration is at the heart of this project as a team, and also through the network to communities across the country.
Beautiful. Thank you, Flora. Can I keep streaming with your contribution, if that's okay, Helen?
Yes, please.
I'd love to extend the metaphor of collaboration in mycelium, if I may, which is that not only are we collaborating with human beings, we're collaborating with networks of consciousness and sentience that are, as Nick says, we're working with invisible forces. We're also much more entangled than we realize with our ecosphere. And what I love about being an artist who works with ritual is that through the rituals, which are earth-centered rituals which are Thanksgiving rituals, they're rituals of gratitude and recognition and acknowledgement. And I think that's one of the arenas that we have really lost in these cultures, which is to remember to give thanks to the soil, to the earthworms, to the trees, to the water, to all the hosts and communities that are underground that we have no visible connection with, but know that they are working to create the richness of food and nutrients that allow our food to be nutrient dense and to give us the food as medicine that we need, which is from the food itself rather than from supplements. And so the collaboration, I feel, is strong between our different and diverse practices, and it is an extensive collaboration which is beyond just the human. The question that I would say keeps us alive is, how can we think differently about food, i.e. that food isn't just fuel? How can we think differently about food, and how can food in itself help us think differently so food becomes an agent of change in itself? It's not just a functional commodity. So those are some of the qualities of the arts that I think we bring, which again, the power of ritual is something that has indigenous tradition. We've lost it in the West, and to bring it back, there are some cultures, like in the Jewish culture, we still have ways that food is used as a metaphor and a symbol for journeys of transformation and transition. So the collaboration is wide. It's one that is about co-laboring, not just with human beings, but co-laboring with all the sentient communities of our beautiful earth.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. I think that there's so much information and insights coming through about really the power of food. You are highlighting that to us as we move through this together. And I feel that there's just a complexity, a sort of all-encompassing feeling that comes through. And I just want to pause and just say thank you and congratulations and really just acknowledge the significance of what you're doing, because you're doing something that actually is available to many people. We could all stop and realize that we can build connections with people that are working in similar fields or that have a range of different skills, but we don't always do that because it can mean dedicating time. It can mean doing something that's unknown. And it's also, I think you've got to be quite brave. You've got to be quite committed, and you've got to be able to explore that path together in a way that is less predictable than simply going out and doing your own project. So I want to sort of acknowledge that really quite deeply, because I think it's a power that, as you've all said, this collaboration, it then, you taking those steps to set up the stage, invites so many more people in and can offer building up something that can spread like that mycelium. And so, yes, I think that question of the power of collaboration is well answered there. To move us onto the topic of food and explore the connection to food a little more, I feel that we could talk for days between us. There's so much here that there's so much wisdom, I think, that you've all got between you. But to keep it a little simpler, I'd like to divide it into two ways. And on the one hand, I think there's this idea of the need to connect to where our food comes from, and the soil and the supply chains and what journey and what actually are the steps that have been involved in producing that food. And then on the other hand, there is what I think has come through very beautifully from all of you, the idea that food is this important vessel to connect us to ourselves or to other people, to our communities and to nature. And I think they're two underlining themes that would be lovely to explore. So with the first one, I'd like to go to you, Nick, and ask if you could just touch on the journey of the Open Food Network, and in particular the ambition that it's trying to achieve in that regard of connecting people with where their food comes from.
Thank you. Yes, and I really appreciate your invitation to pause there and to just appreciate the power of this thing. And yes, okay, Open Food Network. So about 13 years ago, two women were working for the Australian government in food policy, and they were getting increasingly disturbed by the state of world food systems, and they decided that they would build an open source software system that would enable people who were producing food to distribute that food, to sell that food, or give that food to people who were local to them, who needed to eat it. So direct connection between the producers and the eaters. They needed it to be open source because our common belief is that the reason the mainstream food systems of the world are broken is due to issues of ownership and control. One example is about 12 major supermarket corporations controlling the flow of food from producer to eater. Around about 90% of that food is controlled by 12 corporations. And us needing to have a new system that was in public ownership and public control, where the people who were using the platform decided on how it should be developed and how it should be priced and who should use it and how they use it and so on. That platform has grown and grown and grown and is now in 21 countries. In the UK, we have several thousand farmers and growers who are using the platform, and a couple of hundred outlets, which in some cases are farms selling direct from the farm to the people who are eating their food. In some cases, they're what we call food hubs that bring together multiple producers on a single online shop front, so mimicking what a supermarket can provide. In some cases, they're food banks and food and community larders distributing surplus and free food and low price food. In some cases, they're buying groups and food co-ops buying from wholesalers and distributing bulk produce at wholesale prices to local people. But what we have established is a mycelium. It's a web that has thousands of producers and hundreds of shops and tens of thousands of shoppers and eaters and buyers, all sharing information about where is the food, how is it grown, what's the price, how much of that price is going to the producer and how much is being taken by the hub. All of that information is available and being shared. And that software continues to be developed. But what has evolved on top of that is, for me, much more important than the software. It's this network. It's this connection of people who are using this platform to build local food systems. So what Kay is doing in Lancashire, what Flora and Misha are doing in Norfolk and Suffolk, what Tamar Valley Food Hubs are doing in the Plymouth area, building food systems that are adapted to the local environment. They are tuned in to who are the producers, what the producers need, who are the eaters. Are there any schools and hospitals in that area that also want to buy local food? How are we going to link in with them? And these amazing communities of people then build a local food system using the Open Food Network as tools. And that local food system then feeds their local community, but it also feeds the mycelium. So the work that Kay's doing and the work that Kay's going to be bringing into the Power of Food is going to inform and educate and inspire people in other parts of the country to take from the larder story the bits that are relevant, to take from the Norfolk and Suffolk story what's relevant, to take from the Tamar story what's relevant, and to draw the nutrients into their new project and to build a local food system in that area that meets the needs of those local people. And then in return starts to feed back into the mycelium. We tried this, it didn't work. We tried this, it did work. And sharing that information. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. I got a bit carried away there, but yes, it is deeply important to the Open Food Network that we connect the people who grow the food with the people who eat it as directly as possible.
I'm going to step us out of the conversation quickly. I was later given the opportunity to speak with Serenity Hill, one of the founders of the Open Food Network, who, as Nick mentioned there, began this journey over 13 years ago over in Australia due to concerns within the state of the food system. I asked her what she thought of the developing collaboration around the power of food, and I thought it would be a great addition to share some of her voice here before we continue. So this is Serenity Hill coming in now. I'll add a link in the description if you'd like to hear the full conversation that we had together.
The first thing I would say is part of the deeper issue with the system more broadly is the fundamental approach of quantification and everything being numbers and being valued by numbers. What we want to create is true value and human connectedness and deeper values. And we need to create physical spaces and opportunities for that authentic relations and coming together as community. And food forever in humanity has always been a way that we do that and a way that people can just come together and be human together, which is rarer than, you know, we would like to think, because everyone's so busy and we're in a world where attention has been kind of stolen from us. No one's got time, no one's got attention. Everything's on a surface level. I would also say on a kind of physiological level, food that's been produced agroecologically with the help of microbes and huge living organism that is our soil and the plants and the animals in a system. We are ecosystems that are built on the ecosystems that we're supporting through the food system. So it's not just about a nice idea. It's about what is healthy and needed for our bodies, and our communities.
I'd like to come to you, Kay, and ask why you feel, particularly as a nutritionist, somebody that is looking at the role of food as nourishment, why is that locally produced food, that kind of shorter supply chain, how can that be of a benefit to people? Why should that be an important connection that we seek?
Interesting question. Well, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that, and one is I think the main point here, it's about people's relationship with food. And I think if they've got a relationship with local food, with seeing food, being able to be in closer contact with real food, they're more likely to eat it. It's more familiar. There's a situation that I'm working in a place called Skelmersdale at the moment, and I've been running lots of cooking classes, and it's surrounded by farmland, absolutely amazing farmland, all, you know, diverse farms all the way around it. And in the town itself, there isn't anywhere for people to buy local produce. So we're talking to locals now and trying to set something up where they can. So it will be a kind of food co-op with an open food network element to it. And through those conversations with people that we're currently having at the moment, it's like there's a real people really want to have that connection, but never thought that it was actually possible. And so when you start sort of scratching the surface, there's more and more benefits to this. So it's just I'm learning a lot by doing this simple piece of work. So we're just making that relationship between people, quite often in disadvantaged communities, with the farmers. There's so much more. It's not just about the nutrition aspect. There's so many more benefits to that. And I think there's, from a nutrition point of view, they're more likely to eat food which they have that familiarity with. So we can as I said earlier, it's about bridging that gap. The other point is when food is fresher, it's more nutritionally beneficial. So we have that as well. So if we can get food that's picked on one day and then sold the next, then that's going to have a higher nutrition content than fruits and vegetables that have been lying around in the supermarket for a week or so. So I'm not sure. I hope that answers the question. I might have gone off on a tangent a bit.
No, it's perfect. I love it when there's sort of other themes coming through, and I really get this sort of picture from what you're talking about of the absence of understanding where food comes from actually prevents us from making the decisions that might be healthy for us. And we have such a display of all of the packaging on the supermarket shelves, of all the vibrant colours and even characters on the boxes for the children to think, wow, yeah, that's the cereal that I want to eat. And perhaps that then doesn't give credit to the food that they might naturally levitate to if they actually were able to recognize this is where it comes from. So yeah, I felt that come through from your answer there. And I think that a whole lot more besides. It's connecting all of it because you're talking about things that are deeply supported through the Open Food Network and the potential that brings to be able to create a local food co-op. So it's lovely moving through this together. I'd like now to bring in Mish and Flora and move to a little bit more of the other side of the story, that idea that we can connect with ourselves, with our communities and nature through food, rather than just seeing it as something that we need to eat and fill ourselves with energy from. So I would love to just open that up and hear your thoughts around that.
Well, I'll just perhaps talk about the intimate relationship between our bodies, ourselves, our communities, and place. I think over the years working with Mish and prior to that working as a landscape architect, just realizing whether people live in cities, whether they live in towns, whether they live in rural areas, this deep history of language, of seasonal rituals, of family traditions, of, as you spoke earlier about, Helen, about meaningful interactions with place that happen through food. And I think that what can happen is that there's a phrase, a death by 1,000 cuts. We slowly, those experiences, those connections, the kind of gathering apples in autumn from a community orchard, the noticing the first tomato arriving because it's that kind of late summer, autumn feel, the fact that a street name actually is a memory of the fact that there was hazels growing along it, the recipes that your grandmother learned from somebody who lived close to the land, all of that cultural richness that connects us to place and connects us to each other is our kind of, not our birthright, it's just what it is to be a human being. I think it's so deeply in our psyches, in our dreams, in our longings. And I feel that this project is all about recovering, reclaiming, reimagining how place can be experienced, and that actually through food we can really experience that sense of belonging. And it's a very deep and very healing and very empowering experience. And so my sense of one of the connections that food brings is that intimate connection back to where we dwell, and a feeling that we, as Mish referred to, as food citizens, can actually play an active role in caring for the places that we dwell, and we can do it together. And I think that experience of together nourishing ourselves, nourishing each other, and caring for place are very deep, very meaningful human activities that we all can be returning to. Mish.
Thank you, Flora. That leads me beautifully into how true ritual, most ritual, if we go back to indigenous and traditional rituals, they are linked and tied to the agricultural seasons. And so planting, dancing, singing to harvests, sharing the first fruits and honouring those tastes. What we have become so alienated from is the call of the seasons and the turning of the year, because we're have an industrialized, commodified food culture where we can have anything on tap, go to a supermarket and just order something that has no relationship or resemblance to what the season is or to what the place is. So reconnecting with our agricultural rhythms through ritual is a very strong and powerful way of remembering what our food cultures are about. Food and culture, agriculture, the word is together for a reason. We cannot have cultures without agriculture. We cannot have agri without cultures. So communities are very important as restoring our communities through food is a significant part of the work that Flora and I do as artists, so that the connecting of the self is in order to be able to connect with nature, to be able to connect with each other, and remembering too that we have very sensual natures and that we have bodies. It is our bodies that are drawn to good foods. And if we have lost that sensuous nature of the smell, of the touch, of the firm textures, of the different colors, because we can have packaged foods and we're not actually in rhythm with the seasonal and the local and what is available at that time, we become a bit denatured from our own beings and our communities and obviously from the soil. So I think the vitality that food rituals help reconnect us and link us to the place of food through these beautiful celebrations and ceremonies, which again reconnect us to our whole selves. We remember that we can sing, we can dance, we can give thanks, we amplify what it means to be a human being. One thing that we also forget in this reconnecting with food is that industrial food costs a lot of money. It has transportation systems, it has distribution systems, it has packaging systems, and also highly subsidized, which means that it's cheap, but it's not actually cheap for the planet. It also has pharmaceutical repercussions, because obviously if you're not eating your local, natural, organically grown, regenerative food that's locally produced, you won't be having the food medicine that restores good energy and good health. So I think that we are reconnecting agri and culture through becoming artists who remember what it is to be a human being and what food is to a culture.
That's really, really very beautiful. And I so appreciate having these different points of view in this one discussion, because it adds so much together. And through that conversation you just brought to us there about the seasons and culture, when we realize that so much of our time can be spent busy, working through the routine, feeling disconnected from ourselves, let alone everybody around us. And therefore food becomes a quick grab, a quick snack, a quick whatever is convenient. And we miss those opportunities to get the depth of the experience, and to consider food as a ritual is a very far detached way to what many people experience with food, sort of grabbing it, filling it, moving on. And I think bringing the seasons into that, it actually adds something to the wealth of the world around us that we have available to us, but often let us pass it by. It passes us by that the seasons has changed, and there's a magic to that. There's a beauty to that. There's an art all around us in every day that's transforming. And that whole idea of connecting to nature, connecting to food, it is available to everybody. It is free. And I think if we consider something as simple as growing some herbs on a windowsill, some basil, there's a magic to adding those flavors and smells and all of the different experience of one simple ingredient to a meal that is very low cost, that is very easy and accessible. And so I think all of this combined is a really big, very powerful picture. And it does, to me, it really speaks volumes of the power of food And to see you all here together and all of your voices combined and all of your experiences combined, I can absolutely see the vision that you're working towards. I recognise that this is something that you're at the early stages of, and I think it'd be interesting to just hear if there's anything, any of you, and feel free to chip in as it suits, but that you'd like to say to people now that's relevant, whether it's for your work or something you're interested in highlighting for people. How can they get involved and make a difference to themselves today?
One of the things that I'm really aware of across the food hubs in the Open Food Network is that a lot of people on low incomes and shorter time will end up buying ultra processed foods because it's quick and easy and fills people up. And that I know Kay's done some amazing work on cooking from raw ingredients, and that yes, in some cases people don't have access to a kitchen, but if they do have a kitchen and they have basic cooking tools, then it does reduce the cost of meals significantly to work from raw ingredients. And if they're the right raw ingredients, the nutritional value is significantly higher.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's so incredibly complicated and so many factors come into play. So it's not just a case of saying to people it's cheaper to buy raw ingredients and cook from scratch. If, like Nick says, you haven't got any, or you've got very limited cooking facilities, or you don't know how, or you've not got the time because you've got 3 young children to look after, you don't have anywhere to buy it from. Like we have the problem that I mentioned earlier in Skelmersdale. You have to get a bus or a taxi out to the next town to buy the local fresh local produce. So it's become very complicated for people. And not only that, it kind of feels like we've got to change the culture. The system is set up to sort of almost take people away from that connection with food, and so we've kind of people themselves they've got quite a lot to fight against to be able to get that back, and to do it on their own, it's like, well, don't even know that it's possible. So my work involves trying to work with people to overcome the obstacles that prevent them from being able to buy fresh local produce affordably. So, one of the things that we do is we have a voucher scheme, and that's worked really well over COVID. We work with a market stall on Preston Market, and the farmer, a lot of the farmers that I grew up with sold their produce to the guy with the market stall. I actually went to school with him, and it worked really well. So we knew we were putting out recipes, online recipes during COVID, and people could go with their voucher, buy the seasonal fruit and veg, and then do the online cooking class. So that's one of the ways that we do it. I believe that everybody should have access to the same food regardless of income. The strapline for the larder is food fairness for all. So so this is kind of what we're striving to do. And the obstacles, this is just raising awareness with people about where they can buy food, simple recipes, eating on a budget, very basic, simple things steps towards helping people along that journey. I keep saying bridging the gap, but it kind of is. It's trying to sort of make that very wide gap smaller. But we are battling against quite a lot of other obstacles that keep coming in the way, like food prices are going up. So, I don't really know what the answers are. I'm just trying to kind of keep the kind of momentum going and seeing and then now joining forces with Nick and Flora and Mish. It feels like we're together, we're better armed to start dealing with some of these issues.
Your question was, what can we offer people now? And the power of food we are planning as a big project that will be rolled out across 6 regions of the UK, and then providing lots of learning materials, podcasts, videos of events where people are coming together and sharing food, some really detailed action packs in terms of how to run these kinds of events in your local communities. In the meantime, until that funding is secured, I want to just check with my colleagues, this is something that I haven't talked to them about, whether we would be up for a particular area, particular region, to contact us and say, we'd like to do a Power of Food event, and we have funding to support this team to come and work with them to run a project along the lines we've described. It might be that we don't want to do that yet. We might rather wait until we got the funding to do it nationally across 6 regions all at the same time, with those regions sharing information. But maybe we could check with the others before we include this in the in the recording or not. And I just briefly want to reflect on your point about time, and the way our society has forced us to become more and more individualistic and less interdependent. Because I deeply believe that humans are social beings and that we need each other. We need to link with each other, not just on a sort of spiritual basis as the way we've been talking, but in terms of practical stuff, that communities that live together and share cooking and childcare and elder care and work are more efficient than communities where everybody is responsible for doing all of their work, all of their childcare, all of their elder care, all of their everything individually. There's massive wastes of time there. And if we could have a more interconnected, more socially cohesive society, we'd all have more time. And we could grow our own food, and we could cook food, and we wouldn't all have to cook a meal every day, because we could cook meals for neighbours who were a bit busy or who had a bit too much childcare or elder care or whatever going on. So yes, I have a vision for a future world where we are a lot more interconnected and a lot more that we take care of each other more. There's more love. Yeah.
I'd like to come in here if I may. Just to, first of all, to honour and appreciate how deeply reflective and inspirational this podcast has been, and Helen, your way of weaving in and amongst all the different themes and picking up on very, very key and depthful relationships that are so needed in terms of how do we come together to practice change, because change is a practice. And I think what Nick and Kay, Flora and I are doing is practicing what it means to respect, affirm, and amplify each other's ways of thinking and relating and experiencing and feeling through what does a true food culture look like, and how do you put it into being. So one of the things I have done over the years was to set up something called Kitchen Ritual. With Kitchen Ritual, I invited people to buy in bulk with each other. So that's set up not only a way of connecting with local food farmers and food allotments and food growers and box schemes. I'd bring the particular vegetables from that week with a lot of condiments, and people would together for 3 to 4 hours cook together by feel, by smell, by texture, by inspiration, by stimulus of the senses. And that's how we learned to cook together. And then the idea would be that you'd also then link in with local supply, bulk supply systems and order together. And then when the large orders came, the bulk orders came, which would be much cheaper, you'd distribute them, and then you'd sit around and you'd actually make some food together. As Nick said, that stimulates communal practices of cooking and of sharing food together and discussing food gardens and what it is that we can all be contributing as healthy food citizens to healthy food cultures across difference as well. So that would be one of my what can we offer people now, and it's something that I've offered for many a year in many different places in disadvantaged communities as well as in community centres, in urban centres. So it's not complex. It's made complicated, but actually simplicity is the other end of complexity, and we can find different approaches to a food system which really tries to keep us alienated from each other and from the earth. So thank you for that. Over to you, Flora.
Thank you, Mish. As I was listening to you, it's always a joy to listen to you. The word dignity came through. I think at the heart of this project, the Power of Food, is also this idea of dignity. Every single human being is a dignified being with immense capacity to create, co-create, to know what they need. And we've just come to a point in history where I think I was really touched by what Kay said. We just don't, the people are not afforded the environment in which they can actually activate that inner knowing of what their family needs, what they need for their own body, what they need for their own health. And I think this project is about restoring this understanding that we as human beings are dignified and that food is a way to honor our humanity, and that the sacred is very practical. We've been told that the sacred and the practical are very different things, but actually the dignity of being able to go and have a relationship with somebody in your area who grows your food, to have a conversation with them about the food that's been grown, to be able to have a dignified conversation about the value of the food, to understand how to cook it well so it nourishes you and your household, to know that you're part of caring for the place that you live in. These are all things that are actually just foundational to being human. And yet we've been told that these things are not economic or are not viable or are not possible. And I think the reality is that they are, and that across the country there are tens of thousands of people already enacting and creating and building and putting energy into this other picture of a dignified, an enlivened, an enriched life. And it's from all walks of life. This isn't an elite adventure. This is people working in community, in urban areas, in marginal communities, as well as other places. And I think this project is about really refocusing our attention on where is their energy, where is their passion, where is their resource. And actually it's in amongst us all. And now is the time for us to reconnect and recover our dignity and recover our innate sense of what the right thing to do is, which we all know. So I think there's an incredible latent power in all of us to reconnect, recover, restore, and as Mish says, to sense our way forward.
That's wonderful. That's absolutely so well said from all of you there. And as I've mentioned already, just the wonderful aspect of bringing you all here together and hearing these different viewpoints. I so appreciate you taking the time and finding that we can have this call between all of us, because it makes a difference to hear those voices side by side. And what does come through is the power of food. I think that it comes through very clearly. And I would love to, share bits and pieces with the audience now. Within the description, there'll be links so that we can make sure they can go and learn more from you all. And keep in touch and learn how you're getting on, because I think what you're doing is very significant and important. And I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
Yeah.
May I just say to Nick's response, I think we should never wait. If people are hungry, let's keep going forward.
Yeah.
Are you all right with that as well, Kay? That we offer this now?
Yes, let's do it.
So you heard it here first, an agreement to get right on and move forward with the power of food. If you are serious about taking action to connect and enrich the local food system around you, I'm sure the team here would love to hear from you. I'll put details in the description so you can learn more about this wonderful opportunity to collaborate with them. And thank you for listening to this episode of We Are Carbon. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date. And let's keep figuring this all out together.